Mr. Barthel. It's going to be a short introduction. He hails from Germany, where they have a newly formed chapter of INTBAU, and he's leading up that effort. So he's going to be kind of giving us a report on the goings on there. And I think we have another special treat in some of his panelists that will be joining him at some point during his presentation. And that would be the recent Driehaus Award winner, Sebastian Treese, and his partner, Julia. So the title of Mr. Barthel's session, The Road to Affordable, Classy Urbanism. That's my type of urbanism. So I'll hand it over now, I believe, to Mr. Barthel.
All right, thank you, Patrick. And thanks a lot to Neoboris and the whole team behind this. It has been a treat so far. Really great panelists. I'm enjoying this a lot. And I love how you emphasize being a grassroots initiative because basically that's what I've been trying to do ever since I was, I don't know, 10 years old. Yeah, actually, back then I started to take photographs of old manor houses in my region in northeastern Germany that were crumbling apart. And part of me was saying, okay, this is a great adventure. Get into these crumbling houses, into these haunted mansions, so to say. And yeah, and another part of me said, okay, this needs to be kept and this needs to be saved. And we have to find a way to, yeah, to save this heritage. And the way I think this all started was when I was raised in a really poor looking, desperate seeming commie block area of East Germany. And you can imagine me being a 3-year-old little boy. And one of my first memories being looking out of these commie blocks and people fighting each other. And yeah, I kind of had always this feeling that this is a brutal place to live. And then my next really strong memory actually is when my parents first took me to a city we all may be familiar with that was a sight to see for me, which is called Prague. And now you have this contrast of a really desperate looking place in East Germany and then coming to colorful, beautiful, old classical Prague. And believe it or not, but it's my first really strong memory in regards to architecture when I was 3 years old. Coming into the city of Prague, we were approaching the Charles Bridge, you know, this huge bridge with all the statues on top of them. And I felt like a dwarf looking upon these huge statues in the sunlight. And it was kind of foggy. So the sunlight, the beams were breaking through over the river, over the city of Prague. And it was a spiritual moment, I guess. And my dad was lifting me up and I was looking on the city. And yeah, that was a treat for me. And ever since then, I was fascinated with classical architecture, I think. So that's a bit of a personal story. I hope that's okay. Because I think sometimes it's interesting to actually look at where this started and where also the spice for modernist architecture might come from. It's often very personal, I think. So on to my topic, and I'm sharing my screen. I hope it will work right away. All right, desktop, yes. Okay, can you still hear me all and
yes.
see it? on there? All right, thanks. Okay, so the title of this presentation is called The Road to Affordable Classy Urbanism. And I'm gonna start out on the situation in Germany as requested, as organizers and fellow INTBAU people wanted to use this panel to also have a brief overview of what's happening in Germany actually. And then in the second part of my presentation, we'll have the panel talk with Treese Architects, who just this year won the famed Driehaus Architecture Prize. And I'm really honored to have them here. And so starting out, I'm not sure it's changing actually. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's me and Treese Architects and the title of the presentation, as you may have seen it. So starting in my neighborhood, actually, I will talk about what's the current problems and issues we are facing in Germany and big cities in general, or also in mid-sized cities mostly. And Berlin exemplifies what we are facing in Germany in terms of problems. This is the area I live in. It's actually a very posh area. By looking at this pic, you probably won't notice this is a high-class, kind of expensive area. It's like the Champs-Élysées of Berlin, kind of. A very expensive luxury shopping street. But most of it actually looks like this. And we also have corners that are looking like this. So a lot of contrasts actually. You have some remaining beautiful pre-war Nouveau buildings and Beaux Arts buildings and some Art Deco of the 20s and Expressionism. And then you may see these, yeah, I don't know how you actually call this 1950s post-war style. It's kind of emergency housing, I guess. And in between, you have some postmodern renovations of buildings. And then there's various beautiful Nouveau and 19th century buildings in between in the side streets. And also on the main boulevard, there are some really beautiful buildings. But as you may notice, this is right at the Kudamm, the luxury main street. It's been altered, it's been changed in its style and appearance. These are all old buildings of the 19th century, of the famed Gründerzeit style, all historicist. The left one has a chopped off roof. It used to look very different, I suspect, and the middle one as well, but at least they kept most of the ornaments there. And on the right, you have kind of a postmodern interpretation of a renovation. So there's a lot of blight on the street, actually. No. And now looking at another town, which is called Leipzig. You may have heard of it. It's one of the bigger cities in East Germany, 1 hour or like, yeah, more or less from Dresden and south of Berlin. And here we have a beautiful example of a building that revised this damage that was done in the war and afterwards. We have this problem in Germany that buildings got ripped off their details and they took away much of the stucco, of the plasterwork, of the beautiful stone masonry, of the gables and dormers and everything. So here you have a beautiful example where they actually reconstructed it in parts. And here's another impressive example, I would say, from Leipzig. On the left side, you have a stripped off old building that wasn't much respected in GDR times, where I come from. But it's been a bit better probably than in some major cities in the West, actually, because they couldn't afford to tear down all those buildings. So a lot more of the old stuff was kept. And after reunification in 1990, investors in Leipzig and the heritage protection started to partner up to revise the past failures. And the results have been amazing, as you can see here. And in Berlin, we are actually setting up an organization that wants to look at the model that Leipzig sets and to duplicate it and to have the same effect on the cityscape of Berlin, which would be amazing. Here's another more plain example. As you can see, it's also done on the more subtle buildings, the ones that may not have been that extraordinary, because Leipzig decided to actually protect all of its 19th century buildings. Actually, everything pre-war was culturally protected. That's a measure you have in German cultural protection. And I think it should be done in much more cities, and it might be a role model for cities across the globe, actually. Because then you can use tax benefits, and these tax benefits, as well as some subsidies from the state, can be used to protect these buildings and to reconstruct their former appearance. So on to some real reconstruction projects where we are reconstructing from rubble. And you all know the famed Dresden projects probably. You've seen the Church of Our Lady erected until 2005 with great help of the Friends of Dresden and New York City and other places. It's been a treat, and it's been an inspiration for everyone in Germany and across Europe, I have a feeling, across the globe actually. And it's, yeah, it was helpful for this whole movement a lot, I guess. And this is one of the last puzzle pieces for the Neumarkt, the new market, next to the Frauenkirche, the Church of Our Lady in the heart of Dresden. All of this is new, and the one in the center is the last centerpiece for this square to complete it for now. And yeah, just last year it has been announced that this will actually happen after some years of discussions about neighboring buildings. And even the area across the Elbe River, the other side of the inner city, so to say, they will see some really nice reconstructions. And even simpler buildings like the Nagenheusel, which would translate roughly to the clown house, I guess. And this will be rebuilt actually. And it will not be rebuilt because of municipality will, so to say, or because of citizen initiative. It's actually an investor who came around with this idea. It's built right on the edge of a bridge, of the Augustus Bridge, the famed historical bridge that connects both sides of central Dresden. And as you can see, it's a treat next to the bridge, very picturesque. And it's kind of the cornerstone for urban redevelopment on this side of the Elbe. As you can see in this aerial picture, much of this area of Dresden, especially the most central part, was riddled by communist architecture. And yeah, we now are lucky that we can replan this area. Yeah, you have an aerial view here, and have some new buildings actually. So this is a plan that was introduced a while ago, and we will see a lot of reconstructions there, and also we will have some new designs that adapt to the surroundings. Unfortunately, for now, we will have to live and keep the communist blocks. Some of them have been renovated in the past years. but this will be the future view, more or less, from this side of the Baroque Neustadt towards the Old Town. So a lot is gonna change there. And yeah, it was started much earlier, actually. This is a painting of my fellow friend, Paki Terangeabalan from Potsdam. And he's doing so much for our community in Germany with his paintings of different towns and places. And he has been designing some urban sketch and urban planning for this area of Dresden. So yeah, that's things we can build on, and it really helps to have this kind of support. And if you want to cooperate or think about having such views of a place to redesign it, to redesign urban realm, please get back to Paki. He's amazing. And then we also have the Venetian House in Dresden, another private investor initiative, actually. It's going to be reconstructed in the wasteland next to the Old Town. It's amazing. And then, of course, we just have the recently finished Berlin Palace. So there has been much debate going on in Germany. I think the most debate in Germany about reconstructions we had about reconstructions of royal buildings or buildings that are connected to imperial Germany in a way, or the era of Wilhelminism. And the Berlin Palace is no exception here. It's been really controversial. And you may remember the communist building that was standing there before, the Palace of the Republic. And many people wanted to keep it because they got personal memories about it. And I totally get that. And we have to be sensitive about these issues. We can't be as rigid and as brutal as communists or other eras we might despise and say we are the good ones. I think we have to be very careful with these discussions. And yeah, it actually is a exact recreation for the facades you can see. So the main cupola created by Stüler was recreated. And even the smallest details, actually, like the signae, like the sayings, the proverbs on top of it, you can see it here. It's the blue writings underneath the cupola, which are kind of connected to some religious and imperial statements, and as well as the Christian cross on top of the cupola. And there was much controversy about that, actually. But yeah, most of it is actually recreated, except for the Spree facade. The Spree is the river in Berlin, in central Berlin. And as you can see on the right side, it's kind of a functionalist, modernist creation by Franco Stella, an Italian architect. I have to say it's hated by the community of classical lovers and also many people who don't like reconstructions or classical architecture in Germany have been saying this is a really ugly thing. But I think it has been created like that by Franco Stella on intention, to be overgrown by some greenery or later to further do the reconstruction. So not an amazing structure will be in its way, but we can alter it and change it. One of the problems with this has been the urban area around it. There was much debate on how it should look like. And yeah, as you can see, this is the newly created urban space right next to the reconstructed palace, looking towards the famed Berlin TV tower. Yeah, it's a concrete and plaster wasteland. And it used to look much different historically, and we will have to rebuild it piece by piece, I guess. So inspired by Berlin projects and other reconstruction projects, I helped and supported a similar project in my home region. My home region being Mecklenburg in northern Germany, and the place is called Neustrelitz. And Neustrelitz is a royal town that had really strong ties with Prussia. And they had a palace that was actually modeled after Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin, especially the tower, the palace tower. And we are going to rebuild this tower. We secured government funding as well as private donations for this project. And I myself am involved in this for some years now. And I'm very happy this is actually happening. It's really fulfilling my heart with joy to see this happening. This would be the whole palace once it's completed. So in 2023, we will start with the tower reconstruction, and bit after bit, then we will have the whole palace with some beautiful uses. And this is going to happen. Thank you. So over from the reconstructions to new constructions, new buildings, how classical architects or people who are looking at alternatives actually design new buildings. And there's some famed ones like Tobias Nöfer. He's very famous for his early 20th century designs. So he's more like designing some classical modernism actually of the 1920s, recreating the language of the Weimar Republic in Germany. But some of his projects are even a bit more classical, like the Palais Holler at Berlin-Kudamm, which is the luxurious street I've shown you before. So this is one of the more posh projects, the new projects. And it's making use of exquisite materials like sandstone and also some copper applications and marble floors. It's really a treat. When I'm passing by, I'm always looking inside through the windows because it's such a treat to see all those beautiful materials and even some small ornamentation. And then on the left side, you see a rather modest, subtle mansion that is also created in a bit traditionalist fashion, but very stripped down, which is quite common for Berlin and which is also common for the traditionalist and classical scene in Germany. I'm not sure what the reason is that classical architects in this country choose these stripped down designs. It may be that they are afraid of actually using some of the more ornamental languages of classical or vernacular maybe. And I suppose it's partly a reason is that they don't want to be seen as too traditionalist. And also, yeah, it might be a profit issue or it might be on the developer side. I myself am just starting as a project developer and getting into these topics a bit more. I don't have an architecture background or a construction background. It's just my family. My father has been a civil engineer. My grandfather has been an architect. And they've been teaching me about these topics since early age. So I know a thing or two, but I haven't studied it. And I'm starting to learn more about it. And on the right side, you see a bit more sophisticated design, maybe by Patschke architects. And Patschke has been on the forefront for years in Germany. They have been creating so many designs and they've been growing with their office. They had a really hard time in Germany after they finished the Hotel Adlon. Hotel Adlon in Berlin at the Brandenburg Gate has been the cornerstone of the German movement of New Classical in many ways. It wasn't a reconstruction of the former building, but it was largely inspired by the original Hotel Adlon, which was the most famed hotel in Germany. And over the course of the years, it became really famous, but it was badly damaged in World War II and later torn down by the GDR government. And after reunification, there was an ongoing debate about how to recreate places. So ever since then, Patschka Architects is at the forefront of this movement in Germany. And on the right side, you see an example of their projects. It's actually in my area. It's called Achilleon. It was finished in 2017. And yeah, it's really attractive addition to the streetscape here. So from there, from these high-class classical projects, we are now looking at some social housing, which is also happens to be at the luxury street of Kudam. And I don't know what you think when you are looking at a building like this. I'm like, okay, this is called social housing. What is social about this? Or what is even housing about this? Both words are kind of insulting when I look at this. And this is a disgrace to the urban realm and to humanity. And I think there should be no discussion of if we should protect this or recreate this. It's crazy. I mean, there's beautiful examples of modernism, of course, I agree. And I'm not in the partisan group of people who are like modernism sucks all the way and there's only bad things about it. But this really doesn't help. It's huge, it's monolithic, it doesn't help the streetscape. And now I would like to get your attention for the next picture, because it's really amazing what's happening there at this area of Berlin. It's right across this building. We have this scene. So at the right side, you have an original Beaux Arts building of the late 19th century. And what you see next to it actually is a new building. It's completely new. The white one in the middle is a building by Treese Architects, and it's setting an impulse for this area of Berlin, and it's also setting an impulse for the urban realm in Germany. I took this picture myself. I decided not to take the glossy photos of architecture magazines because I wanted to show you that even without taking too much effort to make a beautiful picture, this is a beautiful building and it works in the cityscape. It works in the urban realm. It's expanding the urban realm in this area. And on the left side, you have the beautiful entrance of this building, which happens to be called Eisenzahn 1. And it was just in 2017 awarded with the Stadtbild Deutschland Building of the Year award, because it's beautifully crafted, it's well done, it's amazing with the proportions compared to what we usually see in new traditional buildings and new classical in Germany, and it's done with the finest materials. And also it's inspired by Paris and Berlin Art Nouveau. And I think it's a treat for this street to be a bit lyric. And on the right side, you see a detail of a beautiful new building in Dusseldorf, which happens to be the second center of Treese Architects' work in Germany. And where they had their footprint on. And I have to say, they rightfully won this year's 2021 Driehaus Architecture Prize. Why do I think so? Because they are really stepping up the game. They are stepping up the game of classical new architecture in Germany, and maybe even in a bigger realm. Finest materials, beautiful proportions, beautiful integration with the cityscapes. And also they are really picking on the local language, the local environment. What materials would serve this place? What expression would serve this place? And in that, they haven't been starchitect artsy or whatever to create places with a signet or with an identity of their own too much, but rather with an identity of place, an identity of the location they are building in. Oh, I'm sorry. This one. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, the projects differ and vary greatly. On the left side, you have the small town of Kempen, which happens to be in North Rhine-Westphalia, the west of Germany. And on the right side, you have Dusseldorf, more like row house, townhouse kind of area. And they adapt. They adapt totally differently. When they build in an old town, they will have old town buildings which speak the local language, which speak the vernacular. When they build in a 19th or early 20th century area, they build in the local language, adapt to the street. And yeah, I'm in awe about this, and I really love it. And I hope we can somehow maintain this quality within the community in Germany, because so far we have really, really great architects picking up this idea of establishing classical and traditional again. And by the way, I won't be able to read the chat all the time, but we will have a short, brief Q&A session, I suppose, if there's time left and room left for that. So without further ado, let's introduce Treese Architects. I don't see them on the screen yet, but I hope we will have the discussion right now.
They're here. I think they might be able to just speak up.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Can you see us?
Yeah, yes. I see you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Good evening.
Great to see you.
Thank you for having us tonight or today. And thank you especially
welcome
for the introduction.
So nice. Thank you. Yeah, I've just before I introduce you further, here's our contact details. If you feel like supporting or connecting with Germany, with the newly establishing INTBAU chapter, it was only briefly mentioned that we are now setting up this chapter with some fellow architects and craftspeople and interested people in Germany. But it was a really great introduction session with Robert Adam on board, and Mr. Polizoidis from Notre Dame University, and Robert Patschke, and Sebastian Horwitz, who will lead this chapter with me, and also Sebastian Treese involved in this, and hopefully Julia too, and so many great people. So I think we really got some momentum right now. And we don't look at Germany solely. We want to look at the world. We want to look at Europe in a greater perspective, because I think the solutions we can develop here might be relevant for more places actually. So the talks about social housing, or not social housing, let's call it affordable housing maybe, will be really relevant to much of the world. And we have a rapid urbanization process right now across the world. So there's estimations that by the end of this century, we will actually have more than 85% of people living in cities, which means a huge increase in urbanization and billions of people flocking to cities. So we obviously need to find ways for us to extend urban realm in a sustainable and affordable way. So as beautiful and magic as these projects are, we have to have the talk about how can we actually make this a thing for everyone and for every city and make this much more affordable. So I'll stop the screen. Okay. All right. Beautiful Treese family. Maybe you can add some more light to the scene. I don't know if that is possible.
Maybe we can just make a small announcement before the Treeses start their wonderful session. If you excuse me, please.
Sure.
After this is complete, we are going to move over to the Seasons rooms again for the after party and host self-hosting at home for the after party. But we would very much appreciate if you, before you went into the Seasons room, stayed and gave us a testimonial, just telling us how much you enjoyed or what you found most interesting about Tag 4. If anybody would like to make a testimonial like that, we would very, very much appreciate it. The producers have asked us to make this statement. This is a public service announcement. Thank you very, very much. And on we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Nir. Yeah, okay. So thanks a lot for listening to my presentation. I might have stretched the schedule a bit, maybe. But at the same time, I had to squeeze 2 presentations into one because yesterday I was invited to introduce the situation in Germany a bit. And so we had this in one run, so to say. So thanks a lot for your patience that we will take some room over here to talk about, how can we actually make this happen to have affordable, beautiful places in the world. And here we have the Treese family, which happens to be Julia Treese and Sebastian Treese. So glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And I'm not sure if I should introduce you so much with your CV and where you have been and what you've done, but what I can say is that you established your architectural enterprise in 2011. And Julia Treese actually started out at the Bauhaus University in Weimar, which is kind of a funny thing when you think about it, because a bit ironic, as you say, Arano. And later on, she came to study at the ETH Zurich in Switzerland, and also came across the renowned architect Hans Kollhoff of Germany, who created many larger projects, including Potsdamer Platz in Berlin. Also, he was teaching at ETH Zurich. And I think I can say that she kind of got inspired working there and learning there to think about the urban realm differently than most of her fellows and fellow students. And and it was a bit similar with Sebastian, although actually his inspiration started out differently. He told me this funny story that he actually had a stage to design for his final years at college, finishing his school. And then he got fascinated about classical architecture, actually. And people told him, you should study architecture. So it wasn't his intended way of craft, but here we are. I'm glad that you've chosen this path and that you are with us. And yeah, you also just met at the Treese Architecture office, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, but actually the professional affair kind of turned into a private affair later on. So Julia was the first employee of Sebastian Treese's office, and they had really busy years creating projects for Ralf Schmitz in Dusseldorf and Berlin. So obviously they got close in many ways. And here we are. Now you are married and continue to creating beautiful things together privately and professionally. And I think this is the most beautiful thing. And I'd love to see much more classical architecture couples, actually. So without any further introduction, if I may have put something wrong, give mercy to me, or if you want to add something.
No, thank you for this lovely introduction. It was very heartfelt. Yeah, I think most of it is already said. We're architects because we love it, and we love to do it. If that is a teamwork also, then it's for the better. If you have a partner that actually, you know, makes the design process so much more, yeah, agreeable or fun in a way, and you feel understood, and you sort of, yeah, you combine the two energies to make beautiful houses, then yeah, you found the right partner in life and professionally.
Really nice. So tell me, what was your first feeling or thought the moment you got to know about what happened this year, when you were informed that you would actually win the Driehaus Architecture Prize, which has a cap of $200,000 US, which happens to be twice the size of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. So what did you feel about it? Was it crazy for you?
Totally. I mean, we were totally surprised, and we didn't expect it. And we just sent this, I think it was 12 pages to the Driehaus jury, and just thought, okay, it's more like to show, okay, that's us. We are here. We are way too young, because we, of course, looked at all the laureates before, and of course we know Robert Stern and all the others, and we are like fans of them. And then suddenly we were asked to submit our projects, and so far we just did what architects do, designing and building, and as we are a little bit, as you know, lonely in our community, we don't have many other architects to talk about what we are doing, or there's no platform for exchange. So we were like hidden in our little office and working like hell. Day and night, and what we all do. I mean, once you are in it, then you don't stop. You work, and sometimes you even forget to care about yourself. And this is good to be a couple. to remember that there might be other things behind architecture.
But in a way, to sum up, and also because we're pretty bad at documentation or also to publish our work, it was for us a good moment actually to look back at the years that we have been working and doing a lot of work. Actually, we have quite a lot of projects that are now finished, and we can, it was a good moment to actually see what was done so far, and for us a good moment also to, you know, look at our development during, or our evolution during this short period of time. I mean, we are not even looking at 10 years of office and of our work, and yeah,
that's kind of the crazy thing, right? You are a young architectural office, and so far, when we look at the recipients of the Driehaus Architecture Prize before you, it has been people with an established career of many years, often decades, of professional work and leaving footprints everywhere and traces, and a lot of intellectual resources even, which happens. You didn't so far, but do you feel it's kind of an obligation to now deliver something to the community, or are you more relaxed about it and think, yeah, we just keep going and further the network, and we'll help where we can, actually, while being busy? Because let's be real, we have to create things to actually make something happen, and we can't just talk about everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we feel it's an obligation, and of course, we are honored to get this prize for our recent work, and to have finally someone who is telling you, okay, good job, but now you have to enter maybe a more public stage, and to start speaking about what you are doing, and maybe enter new fields of architecture and of our work, because so far it's only residential buildings, and there's no urbanism and no institutional projects. So we are looking really forward to maybe entering new aspects.
And it's both ways. I mean, we want to continue the way we work because it has been, you know, successful, and for us a good way to do our contribution. But at the other hand, we were sort of now put on a platform that allows us also to open a new discussion in Germany. And topic of today, of course, also, if can this, you know, can the work that we have done be applicable, or, you know, used for other projects, or for other
maybe for more affordable projects, right? Because that's what we are also talking about here. And yeah, it's really nice to actually have this kind of approval by this prize, even though we realize it's a specific award of a specific understanding of architecture. So there kind of still is a gap we have to overcome. This gap towards being hip, being kind of trendy, being the go-to place. Maybe I even dare to say to become mainstream, actually. I mean, artists hate to be called mainstream, but maybe for architects and for the people building, you create places that are here to stay, not just for the next 30 years, not just for the next 50 or 100 years, but hopefully for the next 300 or more years. So with that being said, do you even think that we can create such places that will endure, that will stay, that will be there for centuries, affordably and with a good quality? What is your stance on this?
I mean, of course, with the projects that we have done so far, our main goal, and I think with a lot of projects, we fought hard for it. We try to work our way towards our understanding of sustainability, and so you showed the Eisenzahnstraße. This is one of the rare buildings where we were able to convince our client to work with craftsmanship, with plaster workers, with iron workers that did traditional craftsmanship, as it has been done for over 100 years in Berlin. So to actually reuse and revive this craftsmanship was a hard fight, but we got there. And so this project sort of set our goals to also continue this. We have succeeded once, we said, so we can maybe do this on other projects, maybe not to the full extent, but at least, to always try to create something that is sustainable in the idea of having or continue to have a certain continuation of building tradition. So in from what we think sustainability or long-lasting buildings are, we always try to incorporate the craftsmanship and traditional building or construction themes or construction ideas that have been used for hundreds of years and that have proven to be sustainable. So we're not big believers in styrofoam walls or thick insulations, but try to create buildings that have real walls and are made out of brick or real plaster with the double wall systems, as we did for Eisenzahnstraße. So yeah, our hope, of course, is that this idea of sustainability will make our buildings last for a little bit longer than styrofoam buildings right next to us.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I agree, especially about the part of the styrofoam and the cheap way of insulation. It really, really has been a disease in Germany, like for real. And the issue with this is these cheaply done insulation solutions. Oh, okay, my connection was distorted. Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. These cheap insulation solutions, they really are a problem because they are ruining even old buildings, historical buildings, with this kind of, may I say, crap. And there's not much craftsmanship in it. They just stuck it on an old facade, maybe even cleaning it of any ornaments and details before, and just alter the building into something it never has been. And I hope this trend would not spread to other countries, because I think it's especially bad in Germany because of regulations. So the issue with this being, as we have it also in the classical scene, that some are using it because somehow they find it very hard to actually find their way around using these kind of solutions. How did you manage to not fall into this trap, so to say, and how to create something that will sustain itself environmentally friendly without these solutions, and with more natural solutions or more passive solutions?
It was difficult, but the first thing we did is we went to the marketing department and told them, just tell the people this building is different. This building is really what you see. So it's brick. It's not pretending to be a brick building, or it's a building which may look like it was built 100 years ago, but it's the same way, or the construction is exactly the same. So just use this as a marketing
idea or concept.
Yeah. Put it on the website and use it, because it's like
And with Eisenzahnstraße being one of the first projects, it was finished in 2016, the trend has just started where people, or the clients in our case, well, the developers' clients in our case, started to get interested more in what is in the wall, and what is the construction of the wall. So I would say that there's a slight change also when it comes to building or construction, that the clients that buy apartments in the city of Berlin are getting more and more interested into all of these sustainable ideas, and also about, you know, what the quality of the construction is really like, and whether it's sustainable or not. Because of course it's in the media. We are all interested in saving the planet. And so, yeah, people that are buying the apartments want to know if their buildings are made to last. And also, it's also a calculation thing. I mean, we also, you know, just compared the numbers. And if you see numbers from, you know, styrofoam buildings in comparison to brick buildings, or as we like to do, the double wall buildings, then of course it's more expensive, but it's not, you know, it's not horrifically more. It's you can always, you know, compensate by maybe saving money on other sides. So you always, you know, you always end up having the discussion, and it's fair to say that we have it with every project that we're building.
With the developer or with the municipality?
With private clients, it's of course easier. But on the developer side, you always have the fight and always have the discussion. But luckily, and I think this is our this is a big achievement, if you get your developer to the point where he's actually, you know, seeing the good things and seeing the advantage of it, then you know you did right.
Yeah, and they needed a story, as we just started the office, so we had not a name like Hans Koloff, or you may know Paul Karlfeld from Berlin. So they had to get something, because they couldn't say, look, this is designed by Treese Architects, because nobody knows Treese Architects. So then they started this story about how the building is built, and that's interesting. And maybe to explain why the price is a little bit higher, because there's a reason for it. It's not just advertising lies.
Yeah, there's a good reason for it. Looking at I recommend everyone in here to actually check out Sebastian Treese website, because it's really a treat to see. And so the question remains, we've seen this in high-class projects, and we've seen this in vernacular buildings in the countryside, beautiful mansions, beautiful urban townhouses and mansions and expensive loft apartments, whatever. How do we translate this? How can we make this a thing that is affordable to a wider audience? We won't find an answer here, probably. And I beg the question to everyone in this audience, actually, because we have seen decades of beautiful traditional buildings of all sorts, but very few of them were about creating really big urban quarters or urban extensions of sort. And I'm not sure we can do it all with craftspeople alone. We have a shortage of craftspeople already. And as Patrick Webb put it very well, it's still a super attractive occupation. And, but still, I think we won't have millions of craftspeople in the coming years.
Oh, have faith, have faith.
we can have faith.
It could actually be that public works and construction are the way to counteract AI. If AI relieves so many people of work, that actually liberates folks from having to stand in front of a computer or sit in front of a computer. They might be able to start working with their hands. It's all a matter of how we think about it and so on. This is completely fascinating. And Bert, do you want to take some questions from the audience?
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
How about 3 questions from the audience? Get us some really good questions here.
That would be nice, and feel free to direct them at the Treese family, because I think I've been speaking a lot. And yeah, just speak up. I mean, whoever speaks first.
Yeah, I would say these are questions to the Treeses, real heroes, and congratulations on your Driehaus Prize.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I was wondering, on your Dusseldorf, isn't that the one with the green facade? I was wondering, was that a facade renovation and an interior renovation, or did you build a new building there?
It's a new building. It's a completely new building, yeah.
Thank you.
I jump in with a question.
I think you have to turn
Sorry.
the volume down.
It's a brilliant presentation, and I'm just wondering if you. I saw this in the Financial Times. Climate change challenge needs a new European Bauhaus. Now, this is Ursula von der Leyen saying that climate change needs its own distinctive aesthetic. And what I would be very afraid of, and I think what your movement here really needs to impress upon, the President of the European Commission, that we can't rewrite the history of the Bauhaus again and what it did to architecture in the 20th century, in the 21st century. So I'm just wondering, have you had any reaction from, the official architectural establishment in Germany, and in particular in the European Commission, which has has a new policy in architecture? Is it, have you been able to sort of push the idea of really traditional architecture being the sustainable future for architecture?
No, but we would love to. With the idea of Ursula von der Leyen's new European Bauhaus, of course, there's more the idea maybe of interdisciplinarity and multiple, people working together from every profession, meaning architects, but also, technology. So this idea, of course, we're highly interested in participate in this idea of maybe, finding or even being one of the pilot people to take place or to take part in this development. But so far, there hasn't been, nobody has reached out to us yet, but we would love to, of course, participate in these ideas, because the idea itself is not too bad. It's not the idea of, recreating modern, or to start a new modern area, but the question was raised to create a sustainable architecture, but leaving everything open to the public and to sort of react on the first, statement that was done by Ursula von der Leyen. So of course everybody, and also including traditional architects, can participate. I know that there was a certain time frame where I think 5 projects will be presented during summer 2021 to sort of show examples of what the sustainability idea could be. But so far, nothing has been published. I think the time frame is over now also to submit something. So we'll see what the results will be, and if there's something that we can take from it, or if we might have to add something to it maybe and say, there's also other ways.
Absolutely. Just shortly adding on it, I think that the conversation is still ongoing, and it's kind of a process. So we can still chime in this discussion, and I think we should. And maybe we can have joint forces of INTBAU, for example, in Europe, as well as other organizations who are willing to help us establish a stance on this, because I think this will be crucial for what's created and throughout the continent and maybe other places. Oh, sorry, Sebastian, didn't want to cut you off. Maybe you wanted to add something. Sebastian?
No.
Okay.
I think that this business of the construction is really significant. There seems to be so much embedded knowledge in the manners of construction prior to 1933 that we know that with resilience, with climate, I don't really know how many areas it is so much advantageous over what we've been doing since. So perhaps one of the roundtables that we have discussed here as initiating would be a construction roundtable. It's very, very hard to find materials people who are into this, and maybe the Treeses can refer us to folks they've been working with, bring them to a roundtable. Maybe you can lead a roundtable like that. That might be ideal.
That would be wonderful. And also picking up the question of Alejandro just some time ago, exactly. How do you manage to make the traditional way of building affordable when contrasted with new industrial procedures? And maybe adding on this question, how do we kind of make use of industrial methods and combine them with crafts? Because I think this is key. This really is key to make this a mainstream thing. Since in the 19th century, we had this combination. And we had the largest urbanization in the history of mankind, and huge cities were created in the 19th century, combining industrial and craft processes.
It was a sweet spot of technology. I think we have to recognize sweet spots culturally and technologically. This is a sweet spot to bring to a close tag 4. I want to thank the Richard Driehaus Foundation for supporting such magnificent work and people like the Treeses and the other laureates of the foundation, of supporting this tag throughout these 3 days of really amazing community and communication. We are looking forward to creating an online platform that belongs to us as a community, and I'm inviting all who are interested in that to give us a shout out. It will require good organization. There's work to be done for our community, by our community, on many, many fronts, because we are really creating here some new paradigms. It's not nostalgia. We're not going backwards. We're simply picking up where things were, from really taking the gems of what has happened before and working with those, moving forward with the new sensibilities that we have these days that we didn't have necessarily before. There is no good urbanism without good architecture, and no good architecture without good craftsmanship. And although the Treeses said that they were not involved in urbanism, I beg to differ and congratulate them on the excellent urbanism that the facades of their buildings generate. We all know that the purpose of urbanism is to create a legacy of beautiful places. Thank you so much for being here. I think Mr. Webb wants to say thank you as well.
Yeah, very much so. I'm humbled by what's happened this weekend. You know, the preceding traditional architecture gatherings were kind of intimate affairs, perhaps with 50 or 60 people. And there's a certain sweetness to that size, but there's a certain type of awe that comes with seeing hundreds of people gather from around the globe. And I mean, very much have enjoyed this experience. I hope you all have as well. And thank you to Mr. Barthel and the Treeses for slipping into our schedule. We're certainly glad that came together. It's been a real treat to hear from you all.
Very humbling. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just wanted to say thank you for having us. It was a spontaneous thing. And honestly, I crafted this presentation and the talk in like, I don't know, 1.5 hours or so, because my days were so crammed. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy it actually worked out. And yeah, this statement by Mr. Hamilton that he said it was so inspirational hearing Treese's and the ongoing things in Germany, that he wants to go back from his retirement to work as an architect again. That really lightened my heart reading this. And thank you all. It was
very good.
And hope to have more conversation now.